Based on intelligence reports, President Muhammadu Buhari was advised to make a U-turn on the decision to remove fuel subsidy. Security details revealed that the protests that would have accompanied the subsidy removal might have been far worse than the #EndSARS demonstrations, mass protests against police brutality that grounded many parts of the country in 2020. Buhari's government was afraid that such protests will have easily been hijacked by the opposition and affected the chance of the All Progressive Congress in the next year's election. According to the reports, the president's attention was drawn to coup sweeping across many African countries and how the protests could easily have been hijacked by the opposition. And this was why the president not only delayed the subsidy removal, but transferred the responsibility to the next government. I don't know your take on this.
Well, this security report seems to tally with a statement given by the Buhari Media Organization, BMO, which was actually signed by its chairman and secretary, saying that it wasn't about 2023 or political considerations, but because President Buhari is pro-masses and taking into account the national interest, which is similar to what the security report is alleging as his reasons for that capitulation. But while the reasons given by the BMO are actually convincing and logical, I actually don't see it in quite the same light that they do. I think they think it's quite a sinister allegation to make against the president that he made that move because of the 2023 elections. But no, not really. It's perfectly natural for the president as the leader of his party to want his own party to succeed him. All political parties are in the business of serving the nation. I don't want to use the word power. It's about service. No political party wants to languish in opposition. You want to impose your policies and your leadership on the nation. So you do want to win an election. And if the president doesn't want to drop the ball and be the weak link that breaks the chain, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. Politically, there really isn't. But so that's fine. But this argument that it's also about pro-masses is also fine. It's an acceptable argument, as that security report is saying, and raises a very good point. We do have labor organizations across the country that were ready to protest. And we saw from the EndSARS protest how a peaceful protest can easily be hijacked. So that's a really good point that they make there in that security report, whoever gave that warning. I mean, we cannot soon forget the events of 2020, of October 2020. We will never forget them. So that's a good point to be made. But what is important now is what happens going forward. The die is cast on this issue as far as President Muhammadu Buhari is concerned. We have kicked the can down the road, 18 months down the road precisely. What is going to happen between now and then to make sure that we do not have this fuel subsidy matter lingering indefinitely for future administrations to have to contend with? We do need to get our refineries up and running or dispose of them once and for all. President Muhammadu Buhari has made his own choice in this regard. They're not going to be disposed of the refineries. They're going to rehabilitate the refineries. The Port Harcourt one is the one that the Minister of State for Petroleum, Nnpc Silva, mentioned as that has a 3-stage rehabilitation process that's supposed to start, and we're supposed to have some increased capacity by the end of this year. When exactly are we going to get to the maximum capacity for all the refineries, which is 450,000 barrels per day? That remains to be seen. And also cutting down, the Rosaye report continues to be relevant. We do need to cut down on this profligate, over-bloated governance system that we're running. That has to go. We have to look into smuggling and how we are paying fuel subsidy that has been enjoyed by our neighbors. That's clearly unacceptable. And it's been allowed to happen. There must be some complicity and connivance here with our security agencies. Otherwise, how is this happening to us as a country? That needs to be addressed urgently. And also the issue of corporate tax defaulters. They need to be brought to the table and be made to remit their taxes. There are all kinds of leakages that could be blocked so that the fuel subsidy issue is less of a burning topic. I mean, it's ridiculous at this point. I keep comparing it to Sisyphus. I mean, all our lives are Sisyphean in a way, if you want to look at it in quite a grim way. You roll a hill, the boulder up the hill, and it rolls back down, and you start again. It's like, it's a complete nightmare.
Dr. Bati?
No, you go first, after.
Okay.
I don't want you complaining that you didn't have enough time.
Okay. Great insights as regards what the message that was released, that security situation. Yes, we all remember what happened in 2020. And there were security reports about it being hijacked and all of that. And we saw the backlash, which we have not healed from, But this, I think the bigger argument here is lost on all of this talk about security reports. The bigger argument here is that Nigeria needs to sit down as a country and formulate its energy mix. That's one thing we have never done since independence. And the energy mix keeps changing. At some point, it was predominantly coal in the 60s. Now it has moved away to gas, to petrol. We've always had gas in the energy mix and all of that. What is the real energy mix of Nigeria as we speak today? Because you see, this energy mix will also inform our decision as regards public mass transit. So the first thing, why is it that petrol prices, once it goes up, everything goes up? Because everything is tied to petrol prices. But if we have a public mass transit system that takes another energy mix, like if the trains were working, for instance, and people could actually get into the train rather than buses that use petrol, will that be the case? No. So that's one argument about the energy mix. And it goes back to the argument about urban transit. And you see, that's why in the past, the subsidy palliative they always put forward, that they say, okay, they'll buy more buses. It has not worked. You know why it's not worked? Because the buses will still depend on the petrol that we're trying to subsidize. So if you put 120 buses on the road, like the Jonathan administration puts on the road at some point, they will still have to buy petrol. And it will still be those prevailing market forces. But if you put a train on the road that probably uses diesel, the dynamics is different. So we need to have a real conversation about energy mix to start with. Secondly, are we ready to block the loopholes? You talked about the Orose report. I was so happy when you talked about that. It's not that we don't have people that know what they ought to do in government, but personal interest overrides the interest of Nigeria. That's the cardinal point of the problem of this country. It is always about the interest of a few select over the interest of others. It's not that they don't know how to stop the smuggling if they want to. It's not that they don't know that there are Internet of Things devices that you can put as tracker on the tankers. But it's always about personal interest. And as long as that personal interest is still a big ecosystem, as long as by my calculation, people can make well over 5 million naira in profit but just driving a 33,000 litre truck with petrol across the border, and they can make close to 18 billion naira a year if they have close to 5-10 trucks, then that ecosystem will continue because the corruption cascades. So are we ready to truly do the needful? And moving forward, what is going to be the fate of our refineries? Let's not deceive ourselves. If you have all the refineries working, petrol will not still come 75 naira per litre because you're still buying based on international convention and prices. So I think those are some of the arguments I will advance.
Don't forget the compressed natural gas.
And the compressed natural gas. Okay, maybe that might come in
The
here.
issues are as follows. One, we've been told that the President Muhammadu Buhari is responding to security reports. That's a no-brainer. And it doesn't take much intelligence for anyone to see that if you increase the pump price of petroleum to up to 350 naira in a country where inflation is so high, where unemployment rate is so high, where people are suffering from a raging epidemic of empty pockets, that there will be consequences, there will be implications. So that in itself is a no-brainer. So, I mean, the security agencies, all of them, the National Intelligence Agency, which is blue paper, the DSS with their blue paper, their white paper, the police and other, the DMI, Directorate of Military Intelligence. Yes, on a daily basis, they are required to submit security reports to the president. If that has influenced the decision not to proceed with the removal of fuel subsidy, which the Buhari government had said is a priority, which the government before it said is a priority, which other governments before now also said was the advisable thing to do if you look at the economics. Then, of course, it will make sense from a security point of view. In October 2021, we had EndSARS, and we could see the consequences. So for intelligence reports saying, oh, this will be the consequences, it's nothing new. More so, as Labour had met in January, both the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, and they threatened to shut down the country. Can the government of the day afford that? That is one. The second thing in the report that was clearly pointed out is that the APC is afraid that this may be capitalized upon by the opposition. And that's the political side of it. So the politics of it is very important. It's not about loving the masses. It's about pragmatism, cold cool-headed pragmatism, because we're going into an election year. Can the APC afford to shoot itself in the foot, just a few months to the election? So party members will have advised, don't do it. As part of your legacy, don't use the APC to achieve your own ambition, and then be accused as part of your legacy that you used ladder and you removed it for other people. So that's the political side of it, and it's an important part of it. What's the third part of it? Now, this Petroleum Industry Act had been pointed out as a major achievement. Different governments in the last 20 years could not do it, but the Buhari administration was able to do it. President Buhari made it to happen under his watch, despite the controversies, and it's supposed to increase investment and all of that. Now, the same government has now shown that it lacks the will to implement that Petroleum Industry Act for purposes of expediency. So we keep the subsidy. Fourth point, who is going to pay for it? Nnpc now has gone to Afreximbank to go and borrow a huge facility. And what does he want to do? Investment. That investment is going to come in the upstream sector through the way of loans. Fifth argument. Some people say, well, we shouldn't bust a vein over this subsidy matter, because once the Dangote refinery comes on stream, 650,000 barrels per day, the calculation is that the Dangote refinery will be able, with its output, be able to meet domestic demand and at the same time be able to export. Okay, but the Dangote refinery is going to sell at competitive price. So there will be supply, there may be no supply disruption, but that's something we will see at the end of the day, because the Dangote refinery is not going to subsidize Nigeria. It's a business. Yep. There are investors involved, and they will want returns on their money. Now, I guess it's as a result of this that we'll go to the sixth point, which is as follows. The House of Representatives, led by Femi Gbajabiamila as Speaker, has set up an ad hoc committee to look at two issues. One, what is the daily consumption rate of a PMS in Nigeria? Nobody knows. It's one of the best kept secrets in Nigeria. Sometimes they tell you 65 million liters per day. Sometimes they tell you 50 million liters per day. And if you look at it historically, you look at the trend, you see that the thing just keeps jumping. Because some people just sit down somewhere and they manufacture the figures. Okay, that's the perception. Who is using these 65 million liters? So the House of Reps now says it wants to set up a committee to look at this issue. In addition, it will summon major oil marketers, summon customs, summon Nnpc to get to the root of the matter. The committee is also saddled with the responsibility of checking the state of the refineries. Organized labor has been talking about, if the refineries are working and all that. Okay, what is the state of these refineries that have become some kind of leakage pipe on Nigeria's resources? People wake up in the morning, they go to a refinery that is not working, that is not producing. They are collecting pension, they are collecting privileges on the basis of inefficiency and wastage. So I hope the House of Representatives will have the courage to be able to come up with some useful facts. But these are the issues attached to it. As far as I'm concerned, it's just pragmatism, on the part of the president. And now the evil day, as I've always argued, has been postponed. Yeah. Who will be the next president of Nigeria? What are the thoughts of the next president of Nigeria on the proposed deregulation of the downstream sector? And we say we will borrow to address the deficit with the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and World Bank, that have been advising that you have to remove subsidy on petrol and also electricity. This is their key recommendation. Would they now give Nigeria money if we go to them to say we want money? Because they are not likely to shift in terms of the econometric position that they have taken with regard to the regime subsidy in developing countries.
Realpolitik.
I can imagine. Reminds me of the rock band Dire Straits. No pun intended. All right, that's all on the news headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Michael Wilson, Adeso Amora, Aaron Akerja. Let's give us updates on global business, COVID-19, sport and activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning, good morning. A fairly volatile session, probably, as you might have well have guessed. However, Asia-Pacific markets actually ending generally positive. Nikkei up about 2% after falling 1%. Australia up 2%. Mainland China up, sort of inching up, basically. The Shenzhen Composite rose about 0.54%. So basically what we're saying is a little bit of increases to mark the weekend coming up. The broad index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan edged 0.3% higher. Shares of Apple suppliers in Asia rose a lot. I will come on to their results in a moment. Very interesting in lots of ways. Another major Chinese tech firm is expanding the use of the country's digital currency. Meituan will now let users pay for offline services from hotels to airline tickets and so on with China's digital currency known as the digital yuan or the ECNY. There we are. So it's getting there. It's getting there. Chinese technology companies using Tencent and JD.com already use it. Not Bitcoin, I should say, as we have on the screen right at the moment, but a digital currency supported by the government. Questions whether there's going to be incentives for people to sign up to this. Two dominant payment apps in China, WeChat Pay and Alipay, are ready to go. Winter Olympics, here's a surprising thing, actually. Normally, when you get a big event, sporting event coming up like this, and you hear from the sponsors, it's been all a bit quiet, basically. Been a bit of a muted thing, basically because it's stuck in the middle of a diplomatic spat, basically, between the US and China. The sort of companies involved are not inconsiderable. You're talking about Airbnb, Alibaba, Alliance, Altos, Bridgestone, Coca-Cola and all the rest of them, Procter & Gamble, Samsung, Toyota. So there's quite a few people getting involved, but again, not hearing a great deal about that. Let's recap what happened in the United States then. First of all, big figures from the GDP yesterday, 6.9% in the fourth quarter of 2021. So going out on a high note as far as last year is concerned. A big increase in consumer activity. Jobless claims remained relatively elevated, but nobody worried about those too much. Jump in Apple shares, and so Wall Street looks like it's going to end up a roller coaster week on a high note. The future's up about 100 points as I'm looking at them now. So Apple then, another record for them, shares up 5% in after-hours trading. Tim Cook, the chief executive, is saying that he's not unconcerned about inflationary pressures. He thinks they're going to continue, but so far Apple managed to navigate those. He is seeing those, but the company is grappling with those inflation things, and they don't plan to increase prices as a result. Here's another US ban for a China telecom company. This time it's Unicom being banned over spying concerns. Become the latest Chinese telecom firm to be banned like this. It comes as the federal as the federal investigation unit actually looks at these companies and decides it's got to stop providing services in the United States within 60 days. Now, as far as the Kremlin's concerned, a frosty response, basically that Blinken letter we were talking about yesterday. This is the one which sort of sums up what the allies, that I'm talking about NATO, the United States, the EU, and also the UK, would plan to do should there be any kind of invasion of Ukraine. Tensions have been high like that, but basically the Moscow authorities, the Kremlin and Putin, are going to take a few more days to have a look at the letter, have a look at the contents, and consider it. Maybe Secretary of State Blinken and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov may be meeting in a couple of days. Here's an interesting one also. The EU and the UK, should there be an invasion of Ukraine, are preparing to hit new Russian gas projects. It's the normal kind of thing. This is interesting in as much as Europe's now weighing in a sector which provides 40% of its gas imports. However, It's the financial way in which they're going to go at the moment. They're going to stop, if should there be an invasion, they'll stop supporting new gas supply plans, curtailing financing and tech transfer for new products as well. And this is on top of possibly targeting individuals in Russia with personal financial sanctions should it take place. And on that subject, to the UK, businesses have been urged to prepare for possible cyber attacks from Russia. People who know about these things have been comparing what has happened in Ukraine. It bears all the hallmarks of what Russia might well do. So big companies are being told, watch out, because this may happen. And finally, in this week, at the beginning of the weekend, oil prices up again for all the usual kind of reasons. Brent crude up 45 cents to 89.79 a barrel. That was early this morning, just about the time we were all presumably getting up, and it fell 62 cents. And WTI as well, registering similar kind of increases. Maybe that $100 a barrel oil target is not so unrealistic as I originally thought it was, and lots of other people too. That's your global view.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's obvious a crisis is brewing. The letter, finally, we know what was written in the letter. Nothing to soothe nerves. Macron is coming into the party. Now, America has said, China, please talk to your friends, Russia, on our behalf. What that means is that there are going to be shocks everywhere. I'd like to know your take on the ripple effect that will cause as regards the financial systems of the world, the sweet financial system, oil and gas, which is another one which is trending forward now. And thirdly, as regards, inflation in America as we speak now, the Fed is going to do something about that in March. But with this heightened crisis, there's going to be a blowback. And also, as regards inflation in Europe, Putin was seen the other day talking to some business leaders in Italy and the likes. Something definitely is about to happen. We don't know it yet.
We don't. I mean, that unfortunately is the truth. I'd love to be able to give you clear answers about all of that. All I can offer is the opinion which the markets are giving now, which is that yes, inflation will increase if there is increased pressure on supply chains, obviously, because prices will go up, and I think the Fed will have to deal with that in the same way that European Union will have to do with it. At the moment, ECB looks relatively relaxed about inflation. If I were them, I wouldn't be. I think that most central banks are now behind the curve on this. However, what they're still looking at, they're still trying to work out whether it's, keep saying this, whether it's a spike or whether it's not so much transitory now. I suspect that word's gone out of the lexicon of how we actually look at inflation now. But whether it's really long term and going to be increasing at the rate it's been increasing right now, that's a key thing to look at. As far as the geopolitical scene is concerned, I think we're still at a stage of, thankfully, talking about these kind of things. Yeah, the Russians are saying that there was nothing in the Blinken letter. There only would be broad subjects in it. There's no point in being detailed about that. That's something that the diplomats have to decide themselves when they actually sit down. But the fact is that what we're increasingly seeing is that Russia is not alone. In other words, it does depend upon other parts of the world to finance its development and so on. And its citizens know this. And, unsurprisingly, a call that money laundering should, as they call it, should stop taking place in, as they call it, Londongrad, or London, where I am right now, because there's a huge amount of money sloshing around, and it's enabled a lot by the financial systems which exist in this country and exist on Wall Street too. So I think that we're now sort of beyond the stage when individual countries like Russia feel as though they can act individually. Yes, there is going to be a lot of talk. Where it's going to go, I don't know. I hope, like we all do, that this is actually resolved diplomatically. Ukraine, again, more articles this morning saying that it's not that well prepared. It's defiant, but it's not that well prepared. The numbers just don't add up. But then again, they have been facing this similar threat since 2014, and the present president is saying, "Do not panic. Go about business as usual." It's very difficult to say where we are right now, but it's still talking.
Okay, quickly, Michael. Two things: the Olympic sponsors, or they call them partners, they've all gone completely quiet on the Winter Olympics in Beijing. All of them are dodging commitment. They've stopped talking about the Winter Olympics. And I guess the reason for this is because of that tension between China and Washington and the United States. So for how long would these multinationals continue to play games between the two major superpowers? And in this particular case, what are they really afraid of? Is it to show that, we believe in the defense of human rights, even if none of them has come forward to say so categorically? So today is China oppressing them. Tomorrow, it's the United States oppressing them. Any implications, in terms of how business is done now and maybe done in the future? And then the second other issue has to do with Elon Musk, Tesla. Elon Musk is now coming up with this idea about robotics, artificial intelligence. He's done that with the Tesla cars, with the electric cars, but now he has launched what he calls Project Optimum. And Project Optimum is to produce humanoid, robots that can, do things that human beings do. And first they will start working in factories, and then later, they can do other things. 5 feet 8 inches, tall, humanoid robots that can lift up to 150 pounds. Okay, they keep talking about it. Japan last year produced one small robot. But what is the future of work? Is this just some ambitious promise, some alternate reality, that may never come to pass? And are we going to come to a day when robots will take your job and my job, and they will be, they will have enough intelligence to be able to do punditry on television? I'm joking in that regard, of course.
I was actually going to come back to you with that very point. That's the thing, isn't it? Could they do our sort of job? If you remember, I don't know whether you're old enough really, but when Sweden started using robots for car production, there's a company called ASEA. ASEA robots, which did repetitive and still do repetitive, very, very delicate but repetitive tasks like spot welding and things like that in factories. And that really, but they still needed human beings to say that's good and that's bad. There's a whole thing about computers in it: rubbish in, rubbish out. Sometimes people don't use the word rubbish, but you know where I'm coming from. So, this is the problem with all this. I think that the future of work is difficult. Is very difficult to decide. I don't see right now. It may well happen in the future. Maybe artificial intelligence will allow the kind of dissection of detail and so on. It's on this long curve of where we're all going with too much information, too much noise, and not enough news. Who's actually going to dissect that in the future? I think that will be something that will I wouldn't discount what Elon Musk is doing, but the leap from this word humanoid to actual human is not necessarily something that you'd want, because we all have flaws and we all have problems and we all have weaknesses. And a perfect humanoid, I don't think we can actually live with that. But I may be very old-fashioned about this. I suspect, Doctor, that you and I and our other colleagues will not live to see this happen. And when it does, well, good luck to them. But I think it's a long, long way away. As far as sponsorship's concerned, I often wonder, what does it mean when you say footballers on television with company names across their shirts? Does it mean that if you see Chrysler, does that make you buy a Chrysler? I mean, what is the value of sponsorship? I simply don't know. I know why these companies are going quiet, because they think that just sponsoring a sport event is good for their image. Is it? I mean, given that the majority of the big countries going to this are not going to send diplomats, they're only sending athletes. I wonder if it's a big change. I don't know enough about sponsorship. I always have my doubts about it. I think it's companies that spend a lot of money. What do they think the returns actually are? I simply don't know. But something like this, people will be asking questions about this after it's happened. There's no question there.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. I don't know whether we still have more time. If we had more time, I would have asked you whether you think the banning of China Unicom and this tension between U.S. and China, particularly with telecom, I think it was first Huawei, ZTE, and 3 other telecom companies, with the Americans complaining about espionage and security reasons. Will it ever end, or this is a given condition in the relationship between both countries? Briefly, I'm told.
I think it's something which is ongoing. I think it's part of the problem that these companies, China companies, are now facing. They're trying to distance themselves from being seen as intelligence gathering, and that's a very, very difficult suspicion to get rid of. You talk to Huawei in this country, they deny it completely, and yet the same thing has happened to them in the UK as happened in the US. Now I think it'll continue.
So much, Michael. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesua is here. Adesua, great to have you. Morning, Adesua.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rufai. Good morning and great to be here. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati. Thank God it's Friday. Well, it's been over a year since the first jab of COVID-19 was administered, and now 9.9 billion vaccine doses of COVID-19 have been administered on individuals globally, according to the Johns Hopkins University tally. The United States this week revealed it has made the largest donations of vaccines to the world so far, with more than 400 million doses donated to 112 countries around the world, a claim that China has also made in the past, saying it has made the largest donation of vaccines. Well, Pakistan has received the most doses from the U.S., a total of 47.4 million doses have been shipped to Pakistan from the U.S. as of Wednesday. Well, global infections at the moment stand at 366 million, while at least 5.6 million deaths have been officially reported since the start of this pandemic. Here in Nigeria, 87 new cases and no COVID-related deaths were officially reported in the last 24 hours in the country. The new infections are from 10 states and the FCT. It is a slight increase from the 75 cases reported a day earlier. And the latest vaccination figures as provided by the NPHCDA in Nigeria, 10.5% have received a first dose, while 4.6% others have been fully vaccinated with 2 doses of the vaccine. Nigeria continues to roll out first, second, and third doses, otherwise known as booster. But with about 72 hours to the end of this month, it is safe to say that Nigeria has again missed its targets to ramp up coverage to at least 50% of the eligible targeted population by 31st of January. This target was announced in November by the head of the Presidential Steering Committee, who is also the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. But despite this missed target in Africa's largest population, or most populous nation, the director of the Africa CDC says he believes the African continent will have 70% of its population vaccinated by the end of this year. The agency says the continent has seen a surge in vaccinations, guess where? In Nigeria. In places like Nigeria, there's been an uptake of the vaccine. And he says also vaccine hesitancy is waning, along with an increased availability of the life-saving jabs. The African CDC says 580 million COVID vaccine doses have been received in Africa, and 64% of that number have been administered. Morocco currently has the highest vaccination rate in the continent. About 62% of Moroccans have been vaccinated. Now, the COVID-19 antiviral pill, Paxlovid, has been approved for use in the European Union for those at risk of severe disease by the bloc's medical regulators. This makes it the very first antiviral pill to be recommended for treatment of COVID-19 on the continent of Europe. The EMA said it follows authorization in the US and the UK. And finally, Canadian truck drivers determined to shut down central Ottawa over a federal government vaccine mandate have rolled across the country toward the capital. They had to arrive today. They've got a praise from Elon Musk, the chief executive officer of Tesla, who tweeted, "Canadian truckers rule." The Canadian Truck Alliance, which has denounced the protest, estimates that about 15% of truckers, that's up to 16,000 people, are not fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is currently isolating at home after he learned he was exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. Back to you guys.
I don't even know where to begin with these truckers. What on earth is the issue? And Elon Musk, I guess he would wade in because that's typically outspoken of him, and he's an anti-vaxxer, isn't he? So I guess he has to encourage his own constituency. But I just, I'm going to look on the bright side and the fact that 90% of Canadian truckers are fine with the vaccine mandate. I mean, you had that story the other day, didn't you, Adeswa, about the rescue mission in Tonga, that well-meaning mission from Australia. And then people ended up bringing in COVID-19 into Australia. So this is the whole point of people going cross-border. And we did see those scenes that were really quite unfortunate in the UK over Christmas when truckers were stuck, because you don't want to be carrying the virus along with whatever cargo that you're delivering. I think that's common sense, quite frankly, but apparently not to everybody. It's just so funny. But I'm really glad about the news that you've shared. Good news, progress has been made with regards to this new target for Africa to reach 70% vaccination by the end of 2022. For a long time, that goal would have seemed impossible. So I'm glad to see that progress is made there. And then this pill, that's good for, well, those who don't need oxygen, I believe, and who are at risk of severe COVID-19. Do we know how those people, the potential candidates or correct patients, how will they be assessed? How will they know who is at risk of severe COVID-19 but does not require oxygen? Is it just a case of trial and error? Is it when they're admitted, or do we know?
At the moment, we don't currently know, Tunu, but we do know that those who are immunocompromised and have existing conditions, to a certain extent, do understand how these things work. So they have prior medical conditions and prior documentations of their health, so they do understand the implications of having COVID-19. And of course, medical examiners and their doctors do have their records. So this should, I think, play a role in determining who should get it.
Okay, let me start with Europe. The European Medicines Agency, the EMA, said very clearly that it had recommended Paxlovid after studies have been carried out and the drug had been tested on persons who had been positive with COVID, but in this case, the Delta variant. But their expectation also is that this will work for the Omicron variant. However, there will be limited, the supply of, Paxlovid is still limited. They are following the footsteps of US and Canada and UK, who had approved this particular drug in late December. And the reason that it is the preferred COVID pill is because the side effects are considered to be very mild. So much better, it would seem, than Monopravir. Monopravir is the one from Merck. But there are plans by the EMA to also approve for the 27 nations of the European Union both the Paxlovid and the Monopravir. And I think that this is a recognition of the advancement that the scientists have made in trying to see how they can prevent the possibility of serious disease, serious illness, let me use that phrase, particularly with regard to COVID-19. Now, you talked about John Nkensasong, the Africa CDC director, saying that Africa is going to meet by the end of this year 70% vaccination rate. And he's basing that on the optimism that conditions are friendly. Africa has had access to 850 million doses of vaccines. 64% of this, he says, has been administered. Well, but you see, if you look on the average, you mentioned Morocco, which is the leading country in terms of the rate of vaccination, and some of these countries in the southern front, that have also done very well. But the problems remain. And those problems have been articulated by Nkensasong himself. And they include some of these countries that get these vaccines and they are unable to administer them because, they don't have the appropriate facilities. 2, vaccine hesitation or vaccine hesitancy, as we call it, which he himself had talked about earlier. 3rd, the scarcity of even something as minor as syringes. You know that there are certain disposable syringes that are used, not, for COVID vaccination. So beyond all of that, optimism by John Nnpc, look, African countries still need to do a lot more in terms of making sure, that they get enough doses and that they have the facilities to store and to administer. And they have other things even beyond the vaccine, as elementary as syringes. Now in Canada, yes, Elon Musk has said, Canadian truckers rule. That was what he tweeted. Now, in September 2020, he had said he and his family will not take the vaccine. And he's been consistent in that regard. But as Tundun pointed out, yes, 90% of, truck drivers in Canada are taking the vaccine. So, as you yourself pointed out, the people we're dealing with, they constitute a minority. But they are making trouble. They are even threatening a civil war. They are even threatening to beat up the prime minister. And they say that today, Friday, hundreds or thousands of them will storm the capital. And they will go to Parliament Hill and block the street. What is the argument? The argument is that the vaccine mandate violates their personal freedom, which is the same argument that you'll find in other parts of the world. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau argues that, look, all of this is just politics. He believes that it's the Conservative Party, the opposition party, that is, using these truckers to embarrass his government. But, well, okay, there's politics in everything. There's politics in the vaccine, issue too. But I just hope that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will not make himself available to be assaulted by these angry truckers.
He's in isolation, so I think they won't get that close to him. But it just shows, to a large extent, what is happening in the world. While we're talking about vaccine uptake and getting truckers vaccinated, some people are still going around to say they don't want to be vaccinated. I mean, they're just celebrating their level of madness in public, which is quite very sad. I mean, and when you ask the argument of a lot of these people that call themselves anti-vaxxers, it's not a substantiated argument. It's just bits and bobs of rubbish here and there. You give them the empirical facts, they start to shout like a headless chicken and all of that. And that's what they do. Please, nobody bargained for COVID in the first place. So I think if we have the empirical proof that science does do it, let us stick to that. Let us take the vaccine, and it has proven to work. It is because of the vaccine people can return to their lives. It's because of the vaccine uptake that the UK, for instance, from the 11th of September says, we don't even need a COVID test for you to come in. As long as you're vaccinated, just come in and move on with your life. The economies of the world are opening back again. It's because people are taking the vaccine. This time before the vaccine last year, we couldn't do the same. There were restrictions and all of that everywhere. But the world economy needs to come back. So those that are called anti-vaxxers, you might have all your qualms, all your info wars, conspiracy theory-ish about big pharma and the likes and all of that. The question is, there are empirical stats to the fact that it does work. And the science is also helping to generate more drugs to fight this. And you see the very good thing about science, it is fluid. You can see it. You can see sample size. So the truckers in Canada and Elon Musk, anyway, I've got little or no respect for Elon Musk. I mean, a man that would sway the markets, that will sell all sorts of dodgy things as even more than Dogecoin. A man that will smoke pod on radio, on live TV. I mean, I wouldn't take that man seriously. He's a great scientist, he's a great inventor, don't get me wrong. But that's where my respect for him stops. Anything more than that, I can't vouch for Elon Musk. So I'm not surprised. And you can see the way people like Djokovic have been disgraced. Now, Rafael Nadal might go ahead to win the Australian Open and make history, because the Djokovic was supposed to do the same, couldn't do the same because he was an anti-vaxxer. It's not empirically founded in science. All the so-called science, the dossiers, the literature, a lot of these anti-vaxxers have, it's not empirical. If it's empirical, put it out for a debate. Let's see it. Let's see it. All the lies must stop. You remember the time they said, if you take the vaccine, you put a light bulb on your hand, it's going to light up. We all saw that trick was a lie. So it's not empirical. In God I trust, everything else is data. Put the science out there. Let it match up with the effect of the vaccine. They cannot put it out. And I think it also behoves on world leaders to do the needful. I'm happy about more vaccines coming into Africa. I'm happy that the West is finally seeing the reason that we should all be safe together. But also in all of this, we should not give anti-vaxxers ammunition. And like Tundu said, I'm happy over 70% of these truckers believe in vaccination so people can move back to their lives. We're tired of COVID, but as long as we have anti-vaxxers, the virus still mutates and we still have more variants like Omicron and the likes. We need to get out of this, but not with the anti-vaxxers thinking this way.
Well, I mean, one other point is that what we're dealing with here is a conflict between science and the law. Because the anti-vaxxers, they are, arguing from the position of human rights, from the position of freedom of choice, okay? So, but the thing is, when the world faces an emergency, what should come first? Science, public health, public safety, or individual preferences in terms of what they think?
Dr. Bati, you see, when I hear the anti-vaxxers argue that way, I'm just like, oh, go and argue for your human rights in a war. Because of it's nobody expected this situation to happen, and it has come on us. It's just like you saying, okay, you argue for your human rights in a war when somebody has a gun pointed at you and wants to shoot you to death. That's the way we are. COVID is a war as we speak. We're fighting the war against COVID. It's just an unseen war.
Well, except that the Geneva Convention, the Vienna Convention, even in extreme situations, recognizes, the limits of human rights. But thank you very much, Adeswa.